Welcome to Tales Beyond Threads. Dive into the most intriguing Reddit stories from across the internet. Sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold. How one manager's layoff decision led to a $200K mistake and an unintended comeback. Backstory: this is another story about Sam and Murad. My manager, Sam, is extremely chill and an outstanding leader. His manager, Murad, is a stickler for the rules. I work as an infrastructure and configuration manager and happen to be one of the more expensive resources on the project from my domain. This story takes place in January 2023. The company was undergoing some restructuring, and most of our contracts included a last in, first out LIFO clause by default. When I joined in March 2022, I took a 10% pay cut to remove the LIFO clause from my contract because I was seeking job stability. Although I was still earning more than I did in my previous job, it was only 20% more instead of 30%. Story: as the infrastructure manager, I am responsible for maintaining all the product licenses the project uses. One of these product licenses requires a digital signature to function. Typically, such tasks require the use of service accounts, which are owned by users. When someone leaves the organization, their service accounts are automatically transferred to their manager. Unfortunately, service accounts cannot have digital signatures, so I had to use mine in this case. The product activation process involves using the corresponding digital signature certificate DSC. Since I already had a DSC for tax purposes, I decided to reuse it instead of obtaining a separate one. In India, DSCs are encrypted and require a one-time password OTP from my mobile number every time they are used. This mobile number must be associated with my national ID Aadhaar, as that's how most encryption services work in India. Sam was on vacation, his first in 5 years. Apart from taking a one-day leave in 2018 when he moved from India to Europe, he had never even taken a sick day. He recently got married, and for his honeymoon he took a 2-month vacation to travel all over Europe with his new wife. In his absence, Murad was overseeing the project. Management asked Murad to cut 15% of his workforce. If you've read my previous posts, you would know that Murad was not pleased with me. So, the inevitable happened. I was called into a meeting with Murad, and HR Murad asked me to voluntarily resign, or else I would be let go. This is a tactic companies in India often use, as getting fired is considered a much bigger deal than simply losing a job. It's a cultural thing. I suppose being fired carries a stigma that most people want to avoid. HR usually tries to persuade people to resign voluntarily so that it doesn't become public knowledge that they were fired. This tactic often works well, as resigning saves the company from having to pay 3 months' salary, which they would owe if they were to lay off an employee. However, I knew better, so I refused his request. Murad was quite taken aback by this. Since I had called his bluff, he had to double down to show he meant business. By the end of the day, I received my termination email with instructions on how to return company property I had. Here's the MC I replied to the email, asking to schedule the return of the laptop promptly, as I needed to leave the city for a few days' fake excuse. My objective was to have them pick up my laptop from my place and format it as soon as possible. This will be important later. By the end of the week, my laptop was picked up. I had already backed up a copy of my DSC, so there were no issues on my end. Fast forward to mid-February, and there was an issue with the product. A support ticket was raised, and the support team wanted to upgrade to the next version, as this was a known bug that had been resolved in the next version. The product was used once a week to create a weekly report, but no one really looked at it except for Sam, who was still on vacation, so its absence wasn't likely to be noticed for at least a full month. The end-of-the-month report would bring it to upper management's attention. Now, support SAPRI requires a license check, hence it required decryption of the existing license. Long story short, I received a call asking for the DSC OTP, and I rejected. Murad eventually was informed, who asked the support team to provide a new license. The product support team informed him that they couldn't provide a new license without the company purchasing one. The license cost for this product was $200,000. At this point, Murad decided that they could live without the report. He mostly handled the team side of the project, so he wasn't really aware of the impact of this report. Sam returned from vacation at the end of February. By the first week of March, he noticed the missing weekly report and promptly called me. I informed him that Murad had fired me. Sam was quite perplexed, to say the least. Unlike Murad, he knew that the current license needed my DSC to work, so he asked if my DSC was available. I told him that my laptop had a copy, but it was taken. He checked the system, and sure enough, the laptop had been formatted. He asked me if there was any way to resolve the issue. I informed him that even if there were a way, I couldn't help him without being an employee. He asked me to wait for a few days. There is a quarterly meeting that takes place in the middle of every third month, attended by the CEO and top brass. At the March meeting, everyone noticed the missing report. The CEO asked why this important project was missing the report. Sam informed him there were about 90 people on the call, that a key person had been let go, and the report couldn't be prepared without spending $200,000 on a new license. Now, I heard the recording of this call after rejoining, so I'll share the relevant conversation below. CEO, is this related to the layoff? Sam, yes. CEO, why wasn't this person's work backed up? Why was he on the LIFO list if he was so key? Sam, he wasn't on the LIFO list. Murad jumps in, he joined less than a year ago, he must be on that list. CEO, let's discuss this offline after the call. I don't know what transpired in the offline meeting, but 2 days later, I received a call from the head of HR offering me my job back. I asked for the following. 1. A 100% raise, promotion to next level. 2. Out of LIFO, obviously. 3. Permanent WFH mentioned in contract. 4. I keep the termination payout. 5. Since it will be counted as a new job in my profile, a joining bonus 20% of annual salary. I joined back at the 3rd week of March. I received a brand new laptop within 30 minutes of joining, hand-delivered at my home by someone from it in my city. It took me 10 minutes to decrypt the license using my backed-up DSC, 30 minutes to upgrade the product to next version. By end of lunch, CEO had the report in hand. My new promoted role offers a 60% increase in my medical insurance amount, a take-home company car, option to purchase company stock, and lots of other upgrades. I personally thanked Murad on my first week for the promotion and recognition by CEO in a team-wide call, the same 90 people, minus the top brass CEO. Edit OMG, this blew up. I have been reading all comments and answering as best I could. We'll clarify a few things below, we'll keep adding to it as more questions pile on. 1. It is not at all common or accepted to use a personal DSC for such an important company asset. The product company was undergoing migration of their encryption scheme, and was temporarily using the government-certified encryption scheme. Once their migration was completed, we were supposed to obtain a new updated license that had the new encryption for free. I was meaning to do that, but with my workload, simply didn't find the time. Basically, since it was working fine, it wasn't a priority. 2. The company didn't rehire me with that seemingly enormous payout for the license dependency. Yes, that was a dependency, but had I been a shitty worker worthy of getting fired, they would have paid the $200,000 instead. Sam wanted me back, hence I was hired back. I have a lot of proprietary knowledge and overall a great resource. 3. Murad is the brother of the wife of a senior board member. I still work with him in the project, so does Sam. It's one of those cons of life that you accept and move on. He is pissed with anyone who isn't licking his boots. Over time, I have done a lot for the project, and he now understands how valuable a resource I am. He has stopped trying to kick me out. Great job. But watch out, since Murad is likely to figure out your retention of the backup. People have long memories. Definitely should have made it that Murad should be fired before even considering returning. You want the manual physically? Okay. For context, I just went into my old workplace and remembered this story. 5 years ago, I used to work for a large electronics store in Scandinavia. We sold everything from TVs to dishwashers. Being a physical store, we had a lot of display items and often sold them at a lower price when the product was discontinued. Please note that we rarely had the original packaging or manuals lying around. This will be important. This story takes place a late afternoon, about 30 minutes before closing. I worked this shift in the computer department and was asked to help at the camera section of the store, as I was the go-to person for cameras. I was greeted by a couple who I would guess were in their late 50s, and they were looking at one of the display models. I walked them through the camera's specs, let them test it out, and explained that while we had all the necessary accessories, the original manual and packaging were thrown away. They seemed perfectly fine with this, especially after I offered them a fantastic deal on the camera. We headed to the checkout, where they paid, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. That is until the husband turned to me and asked, "Where's the manual?" I was thinking, oh shoot, Maybe I didn't explain it well enough. I started to explain again, reiterating that we didn't have the original manual, but that it was easily accessible online. I had even included a link to the manual on their receipt. This was not taken well by the husband, who started raising his voice at me and said, "Online? I brought this product and I want the manual physically so I can read through it at home, which I do understand," and tried explaining that I normally would print the manual. However, the manual for this particular camera was about 650 pages. Please note that they both are more than capable of looking up the manual, as I saw them browsing the web looking at reviews for the camera. The husband angrily started to berate me for about 5 minutes, about how this wasn't a way to run a business and how he wouldn't leave without it. I tried explaining that the manual was 650 pages, how long that would take to print, and we were closing in around 10 minutes. But he was having none of it, and he wouldn't leave without it. Now, I am normally a kind and respectful person, and would do everything to fix a problem, but he was being disrespectful, and I was paid by the hour anyway. So with my best customer service voice, I told him, "Sorry, sir, of course the customer is always right," and started printing the 650 pages, while the husband looked smugged at me, probably feeling like he had won over the big man. But the thing was, the printers we had at the sales desk were only meant for printing receipts, so they couldn't print double-sided, and though they were relatively fast, they were not 650 pages fast, and only held around 300 sheets of paper at a time. As the minutes ticked by, with each sheet of paper that emerged from the printer, the man's smug expression disappeared. His wife, who had initially seemed passive, began to look annoyed and a bit embarrassed. Then the printer ran out of paper, and you could see the relief in their eyes as they thought the printer was finally done. But that was quickly gone when they saw me coming with a huge stack of paper to fill it up. 20 minutes and 400 pages, and the wife started to look even more desperate, realizing that they were the only customers in a store that closed 10 minutes ago. The husband was beginning to realize his mistake and nervously began to ask when it was done printing. I just smiled with my best customer service smile. We were about 2/3 of the way. He sighed and just continued to look at the mountain of paper that slowly got bigger and bigger. Another refill, and 200 pages later, the husband's defeat was evident. He finally asked if he could just take what had already been printed and leave. But by then, only like 50 pages remained. So I told him that we were almost done, and I would hate if he left without the last pages, in case he would miss something important. When the printer finally stopped, I handed him the entire 650-page manual, still smiling, and said, "Here you go. I hope you have a great day and enjoy the camera." They quickly left the store silent and defeated. And I never saw them again. Quick edit to clarify some things: I got paid 1.5 my wage afternoon add-in, so staying 30 minutes longer was actually a plus for me. I would have loved to say that the manual was in 6 different languages, but it wasn't. But the manual have so much info that is only relevant if you are a professional photographer, which they were not. Oh, and did I mention that I didn't put any staples or holes in the paper? Good luck keeping it together. Please tell me that it was 650 pages because it was in 5 different languages, and that he had to wait for 520 pages to print out that he not just didn't need, but likely couldn't use. I would like to know this too. Those manuals always have like 50 pages of useless info, and then the whole thing repeated in like 3 or 4 languages. I would be laughing so hard to know they got their manual that really consisted of like 20 pages they needed and 630 of useless and different language bullcrap. Short-staffed? No problem. I work for a visitor attraction in London. Generally, we are out on the floor answering questions, etc. Had a dedicated team that worked in the control room, usually supervisors or those that wanted to become supervisors. Normally 1 or 2 people in the control room. They were never ever on the floor if they could help it. They watched the CCTV and controlled the breaks, lunches, etc. Instance, if a visitor sets off an alarm, they would call us, and we would investigate the alarm. Management decided to pull the supervisors out onto the floor and train floor personnel to be in the control room. Good idea on paper, but in practice? Supervisors didn't want to go on the floor, and those on the floor didn't want to go into the control room. Some of us already worked in the control room as we relieved them for breaks, lunches, etc. Basically, if you were in the control room, you stayed in there. First training week went something like this. Someone that knew the control room training 3 or 4 of the floor people. Needless to say, that put us short-staffed on the floor and management had to go on the floor to cover. As how hard could it be? It will only be a week, then I can go back to my cushy desk job. First day I was training 3 or 4 floor staff and management supervisors were on the floor. Management told me treat them like normal floor staff. Okay, no problem. I asked everyone that I was training normal floor staff, we all got big smiles on our faces. Not even 10 minutes goes by in radio call. Can one of you bring the keys for the front door so we can let the public in? It's a 5-min walk from control to the front door. I radio one of the management on the floor. Come to control and pick up the keys and take to front door. I get a phone call, just have so-and-so bring them over. There's 4 of you in there as per procedure, nobody is allowed out of control room. Management take 5 men to get to control and then take the keys over to front door. So we are late opening. Next radio call. Which key is it? It's number XX. They open the doors. Alarm goes off. Control, why did alarm go off? You need to call control to let us know exactly when to take alarm off. Procedure. All of this is written down. Procedures must be followed. Now that the public is in, alarms start going off for various reasons. The public loves going through doors that say door is alarmed. Normal stuff. I start radio calls to management on the floor. Charlie 3, go to door X. Charlie 3, go to door X, etc., etc. Delta 4, relieve Charlie 3 for their lunch. Lunchtime, I get phone calls from people who haven't been relieved for their lunch on time. Management hasn't figured out that travel time between your post and the break area is not included in your lunch break. If you have an hour lunch and it takes you 10 min walking time to get there, then basically your lunch is 40 min. 10 min to go from your post to break room and 10 min to go back to post. Normal control room staff knew this and would start lunches early to give everyone as much as possible a full lunch. More radio calls. Charlie 3, can you check the toilet? Report of water on the floor. Charlie 3, can you go to X? Visitor wants to use a voucher. Actually, Charlie 3, go to door X. But I'm with a visitor, doors take priority. Charlie 3. For the rest of the day we ran management crazy. Everything in the procedures was adhered to. Count the empty spaces in the car park. Check locks on the emergency gates. Check toilets, men's and women's, to see if they need to be refilled with toilet paper. Look for lights out, fill in your task book, etc. Next day, needless to say, I wasn't in the control room. Didn't matter. The tone was set. Didn't matter who was in there. The rest of the week went by the same. Everyone that followed me ran management nuts. Management, to their credit, changed some things after that. Black sneakers can now be worn. More break rooms closer to posts have been opened. Procedures have been loosened up. Control people are back in control and floor people are on the floor. Everyone is now trained in the control room, but they only have to work it if they want. Still was a glorious week. It's a sad fact that the idea to walk a mile in someone else's shoes is such a literal necessity for so many. Management wouldn't and couldn't see the glaring issues with the workday for you all. Not until they had to experience it themselves. I mean, the lunchtime issue itself, with some having such a long travel time, was ridiculous. Before you criticize someone, walk a mile in their shoes. That way you're a mile away, and you have their shoes, thus delaying their ability to retaliate. Then put them on full blast. Thanks for watching Tales Beyond Threads. If you enjoyed the stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest tales. See you next time.